Hey everyone, welcome to the Build the Church podcast, where we help pastors gain momentum, grow their churches, and go the distance in ministry. I'm your host, Josh Robery, and I'm so glad you're tuning in today. Whether you're a seasoned pastor looking for fresh traction or a new pastor wanting to stay up to date on ministry best practices, this podcast is here to give you practical tools, proven frameworks, and an encouraging conversation each week to help you move forward. Today's episode, I'm so excited to get to talk with Brian Ayers from Gloo about artificial intelligence and how it's shaping the future of ministry. In this episode, we're going to discuss some unique research Gloo has done on the impact of AI on human flourishing, as well as two really cool tools Gloo has developed that are rooted in a Christian perspective that can help pastors save time, improve communication, and multiply the reach of their sermons. So Brian, welcome to the Build the Church podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Josh. Glad to be here.
So tell me, Brian, how'd you get involved in AI to begin with?
Yeah, well, I come to it from the ministry side as a pastor, a former church planter who's always loved technology. Especially not just technology for technology's sake, but technology that helps people connect and grow. And these days, I spend a lot of time at Gloo, and I work around a lot of brilliant tech people who love the church. And so it's this cool intersection of me, a pastor who loves tech, and being surrounded by tech folks who love pastors. And we're together asking this question: how can technology actually serve the church? And that's where AI gets exciting for me, because I think we're at this Gutenberg moment where with AI, where it's disruptive and it's intimidating, but it also carries enormous potential for good. And so we get really excited about what that could mean for the long term of the church and people flourishing. So.
Well, yeah, you used the word flourishing. And as we talked preparing for this episode, you shared some really fascinating research about AI's impact on human flourishing. And I think that is important for pastors to know. It's on a lot of people's mind that not everything about AI is having a positive impact. That's something as excited as I am, as you just shared, you are about how it can help the church. I'm also aware of all these negatives as well. And I would hope maybe you could take a moment and tell us about some of that research and why it's important for pastors to pay attention to it.
Yeah, 100%. So there's this really important research that Gloo is involved in called the Flourishing AI Benchmark. And what it does is it looks at these different AI models and how they align with human flourishing. So not just how accurate or how efficient they are, how quickly they churn out a graphic, but also whether they actually are helping people to live more meaningful lives, be more virtuous, be more connected. And what's fascinating is that this research looked at all the leading AI models. So your Chat GPTs, your Grok, your Claude, DeepSeek. And what it found is that there's these big gaps, especially in areas like faith, purpose, character formation. So in other words, these tools are powerful, but they're not yet aligned with the things that we as pastors and ministry leaders care about. And so that's why I really think pastors need to pay attention there, because we're living in a moment where we know AI is going to shape culture. It's going to shape how we think, how we form beliefs. But the question is, will it shift people towards flourishing or away from it? And that's where I think we have the opportunity to really lean in and make sure we have these values-based guardrails to make sure that AI is serving spiritual growth and human growth in a productive way.
Well, tell us some details. What's some of the data that it came up with?
Yeah, so the research looked at so it takes the 7 dimensions of human flourishing, and those 7 dimensions are things like relationships, purpose, health, spiritual, like your spiritual life. That's like your health, mental health, and physical health. And it looked at how these different models support those different things. And so what's interesting is that all of these models scored really high on helping with your finance. You can ask it finance questions. It's going to give you good, solid financial advice. But when you start asking it, we know this to be true. When you start asking it spiritual questions, you start asking it about theological questions, the results, start to break down, and they're not the type of things that we really want to see.
Yeah, it's if you've used any of these models, you can tell there's a significant bias. There seems to be a political bias, a heavy political bias, and even if you ask it about current events, it's giving it to you from a certain perspective. It's not giving you both sides or the facts. It's just like watching a cable news channel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a real thing.
And then when it comes to the spiritual dynamic and people turning to it for resources and pastors using it, that's something that we need to pay attention to and understand. And maybe that's why Glue is coming out with some AI tools. So one of my favorite uses of AI is how it can take a sermon and do so much more with it. And I talk about that a lot. But Glue has developed a tool that I've been playing around with. And I think many pastors will want to take advantage of it because of the amazing way it can stretch their sermons and save time in other areas as well. So I'm really interested to on this podcast to not just like share like best practices, but also like to dive into tools. And so that's why you're such a great resource for me and everyone listening, because you can tell us about two great tools, starting with church.tech.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So church.tech's this really incredible tool that was developed by pastors for pastors. And so it actually is developed by some church planters, Josh and Sarah Barnett, who originally developed this tool. And what it allows pastors to do is they can take a sermon that you write. You know, you spend 10 to 15 hours a week developing a sermon, sometimes even more, and yet you're only it's only getting heard, you know, once or twice on a Sunday. But with this church.tech tool, what's really cool is you insert a link of your recorded sermon, whether that's a YouTube link or wherever you've uploaded that, and it will actually go in, and within minutes it will break it into social media content. It'll break it into you can have it write small group curriculum. You can have it do other, you know, create other tools for you like that, like if you want to send out a newsletter, things like that. So it can take that one you know, that one piece of static content and turn it into you know, 10 to 15 more pieces of content, devotionals, discussion guides, short form videos, things of that nature.
So how does it do that?
Yeah, so it's using AI to do that, and so it's an AI model that they've developed, and it takes your sermon. It will identify like what the best social media clips are. So it's going to say, you know, it's going to review it, and it's going to say, hey, this is going to perform well on social media. It'll tell you why, which is really fascinating. And it will also do like the post production editing of like putting the words over the top. Which, if you've ever tried to do that yourself, I've spent time trying to do that. It can be time consuming. It just does it for you. And then it also, you know, it'll go through and you can, it already has like built-in tools to create small group guides. You can customize those. You can say, hey, I want it to look like this. I want it to have an icebreaker, and then I want it to have, you know, a little recap of the sermon, and then I want 3 discussion questions, and it'll actually build that based on your template. And, you know, we'll tell people like, don't just email it out, but it'll get you like 90-95% of the way there. And you can continue to interact with it and say, hey, I like question 3, but I want you to improve question 2. It can do all that for you. So you can interact with it in a similar way that you might interact with like a chat GPT.
So why is that better than using ChatGPT?
Yeah, well, it's a great tool that's packaged up and ready for that specific purpose. And so as you're, you know, as you're uploading your sermon, it's going to be ready to do all those different things. It also is, you know, it's just set up for that purpose. So you don't have to take the time to train a chat GPT to do that stuff for you.
You can't upload your sermon to ChatGPT and it give you the best social media clips
Yeah, it's
either.
not going to create clips for you like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I use Riverside for this podcast and Riverside.fm, thanks to Yellowbox, which allows me to use this. Yellowbox.co for all your
We
marketing
love
and branding,
Yellowbox.
yeah,
Yes.
design needs. And but it does something very similar. It takes the podcast and it gives me the parts that they think I should share on social media. It puts the text on the screen. It's simply amazing. Okay, that's awesome. So what else does it do outside of help you with your sermons?
Yeah, so it helps with the sermons like that. That's the big purpose for church.tech. They're developing some other tools along the way, but the big part is the real goal is to free up pastors to do what pastors are actually called to do. And sometimes we get bogged down with like we know we need to upload social media, and so we find ourselves doing that, or even we have our teams doing that. And if you have a team, that's awesome. But what if you could, you know, free up some time for your team to be able to spend that on outreach or spend that on creating, you know, a social invite instead of on editing up your sermon. which is something that's going to happen basically the same every single week.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think I like AI so much or one of the reasons why I like AI so much is because it doesn't just save you time, but it moves your starting point to way up. It moves your starting point up a great deal. So you're starting to your work. Your When you start to work with something, you're starting to work with much more than you would
Yeah,
if you wouldn't have had AI.
yeah,
And so I think, like, when I think of a pastor that's maybe not tech savvy, they're doesn't mean they're not intelligent. They're just focused on other things.
yep.
And then having to sit down and think about a social media post, it's like they're starting with nothing. And they have to look at this sermon and, how do I edit this? What software do I use? How do I cut it? How do I download it? And something's already built in, uh, you know, super, super helpful.
Well, and when you think return on investment, as an average pastor, spending more time on your sermon is likely going to get you better results. Spending more time coaching your key leaders is going to get you better results. Spending an extra hour on your social media content probably has diminishing returns for most of us. And so, yeah, if you can have an AI tool help you do that, then yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I love the idea of not just saving time, but taking that message that you spent so much time on, actually make it last longer. And that's
Yep.
that's the big idea. That's something that I'm always trying to communicate to pastors that AI can help you with. And man, glad you guys have a tool that can help them with it. Okay, so we can come back to that if we need to, but I'm also excited about another product you've been talking to me about. I don't know how long we've been talking about this, 6 months or more,
Yeah.
maybe over 6 months. But I'd love to hear kind of like the why behind it and just kind of tell pastors what it is. But um, this AI tool that you guys have developed that has a Christian based, basically, chat gpt. It's a large language model that you can utilize to search and get, I guess, research. So this may be on the front end of the message, so the back end and other questions. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're referring to what we call Glue AI Chat, and that's a tool that is still in development right now, but it isn't actually now in a public beta, so people can go in and they can try it out. It is very much still a beta; it's a work in progress. But pastors, ministry leaders, people listening can go and can create an account and can start playing around with it. And one of the things that you'll notice if you've jumped in there is that it looks very much like a chat GPT if you're used to that. And it interacts in a very similar way. The goal there, though, is to have an AI that is aligned with values, with those values that we were talking about in the flourishing AI benchmark, right? So we want it to actually be an AI that is aligned with the purposes that we would want. So it's actually trained on trusted Christian resources, trusted ministry resources that are designed with those flourishing principles in mind. So that's kind of the unique thing about it. It functions similarly to many of the other things out there, but the way that that model is trained, it's just trained on different resources instead of just the open internet as others are.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Some pastors are hesitant to utilize the secular large language models, which is what ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and all that is, because of the worldly perspectives and the answers that are generated. They're not coming from a place that shares our values. And if you used AI at all, or you're just kind of used to this in general, it can be infuriating. Um, because you're just, when you're using a tool like that, you're hoping for unbiased, but it's
Yep.
actually biased against your values. And the more I learn about some of the people behind some of these products and their conversations about human flourishing, like, they don't care that much about that, much less the eternal kingdom of God. And you guys are trying to answer that, right? And so what is this tool called? And tell us more about how, like, what are you envisioning the use cases being? Like, why are people using it? What would they use it for?
Yeah, I mean, what you said there, I mean, it's a really valid concern, and I hear that a lot, right? Most of these large language models are built by secular companies. They're trained just by scraping whatever's on the internet, and they're going to naturally reflect the worldview and the values of that ecosystem. And so, I think just knowing that and being aware of that, I think is important for pastors and ministry leaders to know for our own use, and also as we're talking to people in our congregations, we know from research that they're asking these AI tools spiritual questions, and they're getting results that may or may not be what we'd want them to hear. Some of them are asking them mental health questions and getting results that we may or may not be happy with. And so it's important to know that. That's why we did that flourishing AI benchmark. We want to bring that conversation to the forefront and not just keep it in the Christian sphere, so to speak, but we actually want we would love for the for AI models to adopt this sort of benchmark outside of it. But this tool, this it's called Gloo AI Chat. You can go to ai.gloo.com and you can check it out there. But the usage would be much like the way that you might interact with a Chat GPT. You could ask it questions. You could ask it you could ask it for help with developing a sermon. You could ask it, you could ask it non-Christian questions or just, things that you might, hey, what should I do about my money? What should I do about my parenting? What's cool is that it's gonna cite what those Christian resources that it's drawing from are. So all of the content that's in Glue Chat AI is there's been publisher permission for it to be there, and so we haven't just gone out and just scraped things, but everyone's giving consent to their content being in there, which we think is a part of a moral imperative as well.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you guys are accomplishing more than one thing with this. Is the copyright and the basically ethics of what people are getting out of ChatGPT is that what's it coming from?
Right.
So you're identifying that source for your own security, so you know if it's a trusted source or not. But then secondly, you're giving it credit, right? And so I guess I use the tool a lot, but I'd love for you to kind of I use it some, haven't used it a lot. It's new, but I do know this about it. But I would love for you to explain to everybody, what are the sources it's pulling from? How can I control those sources? And then how is it giving those sources credit?
Yeah. So if you ask it a question, it's going to up in the sidebar. It's going to tell you what the source that it's pulling from is, and you have the opportunity to turn on and turn off certain sources. Because even when we talk about bias and whatnot, we know within the Christian space there might be certain theologians or certain theological perspectives that we agree with more or we agree with less. It's good to know where a particular thought is coming from. If we have a certain theological viewpoint, it's good to know if the content that I'm reading is coming from a different theological viewpoint that might help how I interpret that. So that's good to know. It cites that, it lets you know that. And then you have the opportunity to say, you know what, I actually want to turn that off or I want to hear more of that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's really cool, and I think there's a lot of people that are concerned about the sources. There's a lot of people maybe not even trying these generative AI tools because they've read the news or they don't trust the data. But this is something that pastors can take advantage of and have a lot of confidence in it because it's all kind of right there in front of you what you're using. So hopefully it'll encourage more people in the Christian realm to take advantage of these type of tools.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think too, for those that are concerned about the bias in them, it could be great to use these AI tools for things that are not necessarily spiritual. Like if you're as a pastor trying to, save time and stretch your resources, you can use it for, hey, I heard about this business book. Summarize this business book for me. I don't want to read the whole thing. Like that can be a great use for it where you're not necessarily so concerned about its theological bias.
Okay, so that interests me. So if it's pulling from those resources, how would it know about that business book?
Oh, I'm saying even if you use something like a Chat GPT, you could just, if you're concerned about using those secular models. So
Yeah. So is it can it use the internet at all to like tell me about things outside of those sources?
it's trained only on Christian resources. So yeah, so it doesn't necessarily, have outside internet connection like that.
Okay, so you mentioned one of the strengths of like the secular ones being like I can ask it financial questions. So is Dave Ramsey connected? Can I
Yeah, so
ask?
you might get some yeah, you're gonna get some good Christian resources. Yeah, some Crown Financial resources or some Dave Ramsey, if you ask it. Yep.
Okay, and then I'm wondering, like, what about entertainment? If I'm wondering about entertainment for my kids, what they're watching, can I ask it questions like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna pull in. I think there's some content in there from from some different Christian entertainment sources as well. So
Okay, so how can churches, how can pastors take advantage of this? And then how do you imagine or envision them getting in the hands of the people in their church to use instead of some of these secular resources?
Absolutely. Yeah. Right now it's in the kind of this public beta. So it's really kind of in this still in this work in progress phase. And so right now, for somebody who wants to try it out, they can be a part of this active testing and refining part of the process that we're in. Eventually down the line, there'll be more of a public release of it. And that's where we imagine that it would be a great tool to get in the hands of everyday people. Once we get to that point.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, when do you expect that to be?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer of it. I mentioned earlier how I get the opportunity to work with a lot of incredible tech people, and they are way more into it the day to day. I'm
Yeah.
glad that they're glad that I'm not the person in the day to day of all that.
Well, I'm glad you're letting us talk about this because
Yeah.
it is in beta. It's
Yep.
not 100% ready, but you're letting us talk about it, and pastors can be on the cutting floor and give feedback on it. So, Brian, how can people connect with you, or what's your hope if they're listening to this? They want to find out more about these products or Glue. What's the next step?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you want to hear more about like the research, you can read all about. There's a white paper that you can read about. If you want to check out the beta that we've just been talking about, you can go to ai.glue, so the gloo.com, so ai.glue.com, and you can check out all the stuff there. If you're interested in the church.tech tool, you can go to church.tech. You can type that into your web browser and you can sign up for a free trial. You can plug in your sermon and you can see exactly what we were talking about there, and get a chance to check that out. And then, yeah, if you want to connect, I'm on social platforms. I'm just at Brian Ayers. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can find me there.
LinkedIn, as you're a real
LinkedIn.
professional. Well, I'm really glad that you talked with me today. I'm very glad to learn about these tools. If you're wondering if this is a paid segment, it is not. No, we're just interested in tools and learning about how to help pastors. And I'm glad that you guys are working on this. And I will link all of this in the show notes so you can read in the description and link to all these things. And Brian, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks
Appreciate
for
you.
having me, Josh.
So glad you joined us today. And if you're listening today, thank you for joining us as well on the Build the Church podcast. I hope this conversation helps you learn a little bit more about the connection between AI and human flourishing, as well as maybe you picked up a couple tools rooted in Christian faith that empower you as a pastor. If you're out there pastoring and just want you to know you're doing hard but important work, what you're doing is so, so important. I want to remind you that every pastor in church can make a difference. Sometimes it just takes being willing to try something new. So if you found this episode helpful, take a second to rate the show, as long as it's a perfect rating. Share it with a friend and follow us on social media at the handle buildthe.church. And as always, keep leading and believing strong.